The night my mother slept with my fiancé should have broken me. Instead, what I said at the altar shattered the future they never prepared for. I stand at the altar of St. Albans Church, my trembling hands hidden in the folds of ivory silk my mother insisted would complement my complexion better than that bland cream you picked, feel clammy with dread. The dress is too tight across my ribs now, constricting my breath as I look up at Beckett's face. His blue eyes, usually so captivating, now seem shallow, like decorative pools rather than the ocean depths I once imagined. The church is filled with precisely 180 guests. I know because my mother, Lorraine, recited the final count to me 3 times this morning, emphasizing the importance of Judge Mason Holloway's colleagues being properly accommodated in the front pews. The organ music fills the vaulted ceiling, but instead of turning toward Reverend Wilson as expected, I pivot slowly, facing our assembled guests. Actually, before we begin, I have something to say. The organist's fingers slip, creating a discordant note that hangs in the air before silence falls completely. My fiancé Beckett and my mother Lorraine have been having an affair since the day after our engagement. The words come out clearer than I expected, amplified by the church's perfect acoustics. I watch comprehension ripple through the crowd like a stone thrown into still water. First confusion, then disbelief, finally shock. My father, Pastor Everett Quinn, grips the pew before him, his face ashen. For a moment I wonder if he might collapse. 6 months ago, Beckett had proposed during the second act of La Traviata at the Kennedy Center. He had arranged for our families to witness from adjacent boxes while my mother dabbed at theatrical tears, and my father beamed with quiet pride. The diamond had caught the stage lights, scattering tiny rainbows across my hand as the soprano hit her highest note. She said yes. Beckett had announced to polite applause from nearby patrons. That night my mother had whispered, "The Holloways are Washington royalty, darling. Judge Mason can open doors even your father's ministry can't." The next morning Lorraine arrived at my apartment with 3 wedding planning binders and a critical eye. Wildflowers? For a Quinn Holloway wedding? Honestly, Rowan, sometimes I wonder if you're trying to embarrass us. You need elegance, not some roadside arrangement. I had nodded, swallowing my preferences as I had done for 29 years. My father had been different, placing his hand on my shoulder when I showed him Beckett's ring. "The son of Judge Holloway," he had said softly. "Your mother and I couldn't be prouder." 2 days before the wedding, I found my mother's leather-bound journal in her Mercedes while retrieving her forgotten phone. The book had fallen from her purse, opening to a page that began, "B's eyes. He'll tell her after the honeymoon about our arrangement." My phone rang 20 minutes later as I sat in my car, still parked outside her house, the journal open in my lap. "Rowan? My journal is missing. It has private thoughts, nothing important, but I need it back immediately." Her voice held an edge I had never heard before. My own voice surprised me with its steadiness. "Yes, Mother, very private indeed." I hung up while she was still speaking. I have spent my life yielding to my mother's expectations, her vision for my future, her standards for my appearance, her judgments about my choices, all accepted with the dutiful smile expected of Pastor Quinn's daughter. The perfect editor, the perfect fiancé, the perfect daughter, never quite measuring up but always trying. Now I risk everything, my relationship with both parents, my social standing in a city built on appearances, even my career as a senior editor where Judge Holloway's connections reach far. Last night I checked into the Four Seasons under the name Ellen Berryhill, paying cash, ignoring the clerk's curious glance at my lack of luggage. In the morning I will return to the hotel rather than to the life I thought I was building. But tonight I stand in ivory silk before 180 witnesses, my hands steady at last as I prepare to speak again. I believe we all deserve the truth before making sacred vows, don't you? The day before the wedding, the leather-bound journal lay open on the cold tiles of the Four Seasons bathroom floor where I had been sitting for 20 minutes. My legs had gone numb, but the nausea came in waves too powerful to risk standing. The pages before me contained not just an affair, but a future meticulously planned behind my back. "Beckett says we'll need to be even more careful after the honeymoon," my mother wrote in her precise handwriting. "He's arranged for a monthly conference in Baltimore where we can meet without raising suspicions. When Rowan is busy with her little books, we'll have our own story to write." My fingers traced the words, feeling the indentation where her pen had pressed into the paper. Concrete evidence of a betrayal so complete it seemed almost architectural in its design. In the next entry, dated just 3 weeks ago, B worries R might notice the wedding fund withdrawals. I told him not to concern himself. She's never questioned a financial decision in her life. The suite at the Jefferson will remain our special place. I forced myself to stand, legs tingling painfully as blood returned. Spreading the hotel room comforter flat, I arranged the evidence I had gathered, bank statements showing withdrawals from our joint wedding account matching my mother's favorite boutiques, location history from Beckett's phone, thoughtlessly shared with me months ago for transparency, revealing regular Tuesday afternoon visits to the Jefferson Hotel, photographs I had taken of the most damning journal entries. The bathroom tiles felt steadier beneath my feet now. My hands no longer shook. When my phone rang and my father's name illuminated the screen, I answered with a calm that surprised me. "Rowan, your mother is beside herself. Whatever disagreement you two have had, Dad," I interrupted, the word feeling strange in my mouth. I had never cut off my father before. "I need you to listen carefully. Tomorrow at the church, be prepared for the truth. That's all I can say right now." His confusion radiated through the silence. "What truth, Rowan? You're speaking in riddles. For once in my life I'm speaking clearly," I said, finding power in my newfound purpose. "I'll see you tomorrow." After hanging up, I opened the text messages I had discovered earlier. My mother to Beckett yesterday. "Let's accidentally meet in the garden during the rehearsal dinner." "Rowan will be busy with the coordinator, any $2,000 dinner." Beckett's response, "Looking forward to our little tradition." The betrayal extended further than I had imagined. A message from my bridesmaid Charlotte to the others. "Do we tell Rowan about seeing Lorraine and Beckett together at the Capitol Grill? Feels wrong to drop this bomb right before the wedding." My oldest friend Margaret responding, "Absolutely not, it would crush her. Some truths do more harm than good." I thought I had reached the bottom of this pit, but it kept descending. The final blow came when I checked my voicemail, my mother's voice speaking to Beckett but mistakenly calling my number. "She's been so emotional and unstable lately. After the wedding, we should suggest she talk to someone professional. Judge Holloway could recommend someone discreet." Setting down the phone, I stared at the wedding dress hanging on the closet door. The implications of what I was planning settled heavily on my shoulders. Judge Mason Holloway chaired the board overseeing grant funding for my publishing house. One word from him could end my career advancement. Washington's elite social circles, where I had built connections that supported my author's book launches, would undoubtedly label me unstable or vindictive after tomorrow. My parents' marriage of 35 years would shatter. The comfortable security of joining the wealthy Holloway family would vanish. The life I believed I was building with Beckett, the Georgetown brownstone we had toured, the children we had discussed, the shared career ambitions, all revealed as elaborate fiction. I sank onto the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I was sacrificing. My phone chimed with a text message. "Heard through Charlotte you're Mie. Everything okay? Need me to bring wine and a getaway car? Fallon Reyes, my college roommate turned investigative journalist, the only person I knew who valued truth above comfort at all costs." I typed quickly, "Can you come to the Four Seasons, room 718? Bring your recorder." 20 minutes later, Fallon sat cross-legged on my hotel bed, surveying the evidence I had laid out. She didn't ask questions, just examined each item carefully. When she finally looked up, her eyes were hard with certainty. "I'll document everything," she said simply. "Whatever you need." For the first time in days, the pressure in my chest eased slightly. Someone believed me without question. Later that night, I smoothed my wedding dress across the hotel bedspread, the ivory silk catching the dim light. Tomorrow waited just hours away, and a question haunted me as I traced the delicate beadwork my mother had insisted would elevate the simplicity of the design. Should I confront them privately and walk away with dignity, or should I make sure everyone knew exactly who they truly were? A quiet exit might preserve some relationships, but a public revelation might prevent them from hurting others. What would you do when the people you trusted most have betrayed you so completely? The clock read 1:17 a.m. when I finally made my decision. That night, Lorraine's fifth voicemail hit a new octave of desperation. I deleted it without listening past her opening plea, just as I had done with the previous four. "Your mother again?" Fallon asked, sliding a fresh coffee across the hotel desk where I had spent the night assembling evidence. "She's evolved from commanding to begging." I arranged another screenshot in my growing portfolio of betrayal. Next comes the tearful manipulation. As if summoned by my prediction, my phone lit up with Beckett's name. I let it ring through to voicemail, where he left a carefully measured message about being concerned and how he had enlisted the guys to find me because I must be experiencing perfectly normal pre-wedding anxiety. His voice carried the practiced sincerity that once made me feel cherished. Now it sounded like testimony being prepared for future listeners. The hotel phone rang an hour later, circumventing my cell's growing block list. "Miss Berryhill? There's a delivery for you." Despite my alias, they had found me. The jewelry box contained a platinum bracelet with a note promising our perfect future together. I dropped it back in its velvet nest without trying it on, adding the card to my evidence file. My boss called next. Judge Holloway had reached out to her with concerns about Rowan's mental health. The weight of Holloway influence settled across my shoulders. Even now, they were working to discredit me before I could speak. I spread the printouts across the king-sized bed, emails between accounts I wasn't supposed to know existed, text message screenshots, photographs of key journal pages. The methodical organization gave me purpose when grief threatened to overwhelm me. Every few hours, doubt crept in like rising water. Was I overreacting? Could there be an explanation I hadn't considered? Then I reread the journal entry where my mother described Beckett as the partner I deserved, and the water receded, replaced by cold clarity. Sleep came in fragmented hours. I woke repeatedly to smooth the wedding dress hanging in the closet. The ivory silk my mother had insisted upon had become a symbol of everything she had chosen for me: my career path, my apartment location, even the highlights in my hair that brought out my eyes. Each time I touched the fabric, I rehearsed tomorrow's words. Reverend Wilson had been kind but firm when I called. He could not stop the ceremony without cause, but he assured me he would not interfere if I wished to speak. The careful statement I had written focused on facts, not the emotions that churned beneath my sternum. 3 sentences that would change everything. I had memorized them, tested their delivery in the bathroom mirror until they sounded steady, unemotional. You know, most brides get cold feet, not a cold case file. Fallon arrived at dawn with fresh coffee and donuts. "You're the strongest woman I know." Her unexpected quip startled a laugh from me, the first genuine moment of lightness in days. The church bridal room felt both familiar and foreign when we arrived. I had arranged to come early, before my mother could establish her command center of hairspray and expectations. My father knocked softly an hour before the ceremony. Rowan. His voice carried the gentle authority that filled our home on Sunday mornings. "Your mother says you've been unreachable. Is everything—" I placed the leather journal in his hands, open to the page that had destroyed my future. "Read it, Dad." Everett Quinn had delivered thousands of sermons about moral certainty, about standing firm against temptation. I watched that certainty crumble as his eyes moved across the page. Lorraine wouldn't— His voice faltered, then faded completely as he continued reading. His hands trembled so violently that the journal pages fluttered. I took his hands in mine, surprised to find my own perfectly steady. "We should handle this privately," he whispered, "for the sake of the church, the congregation." "They chose public vows," I interrupted, my voice soft but unyielding. "They deserve a public reckoning." The silence stretched between us. I saw him struggling, the pastor concerned with scandal, the husband betrayed, the father watching his daughter stand alone. Finally, he straightened his shoulders, the familiar posture returning. "Then I'll walk you down that aisle, daughter, all the way." In those simple words, I heard him choosing me over appearances for the first time in my life. The next hour passed in focused preparation. Fallon positioned herself strategically with her press credentials and camera for documentation purposes only, though we both recognized the power her presence represented. The church organist, Mrs. Calloway, who had known me since childhood choir practice, nodded solemnly when I explained my request. "I'll stop playing when you turn around," she promised. "Your mother always did try to drown out other voices." The bridesmaids arrived in their prescribed burgundy gowns, their collective discomfort visible as they avoided direct eye contact. All except Margaret, who broke formation to hand me a glass of water. "I should have told you," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The water soothed my throat, preparing it for words that would reshape countless lives, including my own. In my clutch purse, alongside my carefully crafted statement, rested confirmation that Judge Holloway's most influential colleagues had received copies of selected evidence this morning. Whatever professional repercussions awaited me, Beckett and my mother would not emerge unscathed. I heard the processional music begin in the sanctuary. My father offered his arm, his eyes clearer now, resolved. "Remember who you are, Rowan," he squeezed my hand. "A Quinn never falters in the face of truth." I took a deep breath and stepped forward, preparing to trade the life I thought I wanted for something infinitely more valuable: my self-respect. Back in the present, I walked down the aisle with deliberate steps, my eyes meeting those of the guests on both sides. Some smile with anticipation, others nod appreciatively at what they assume is bridal confidence. If only they knew the storm brewing beneath my ivory silk. The organ music swells as I approach the altar where Beckett waits, his blue eyes twinkling with what the congregation surely interprets as love. I know better now, those eyes hold nothing but shallow pools of ambition and deceit. I take my place before Reverend Wilson, who smiles benevolently at the assembled guests. I allow the ceremony to proceed exactly as rehearsed, the readings, the prayers, the homily about sacred trust between husband and wife. Each word of Reverend Wilson's sermon about fidelity lands like a hammer blow against my ribcage, but I remain composed, waiting. Finally, the moment arrives. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The traditional pause follows, meant to be perfunctory. Not today. I can, I say, my voice clear and steady, carrying to the farthest pew thanks to the church's perfect acoustics. I have something to share with everyone gathered here today. Recognition flashes in Beckett's eyes when I mention the journal. His composed facade cracks, revealing panic beneath the polished surface. "Rowan," he whispers urgently, "what are you doing?" My mother rises from her front row seat, her crimson dress a slash of alarm against the muted colors of the church. "My daughter has been under tremendous stress," she calls out, her voice pitched to convey maternal concern. "She's been in a fragile mental state with all the wedding preparations." The congregation murmurs, uncertain whom to believe. Then my father stands, the weight of his pastoral authority filling the sanctuary. "Lorraine," he says, his voice carrying the command he usually reserves for Sunday sermons, "sit down." The church falls silent. In 35 years of marriage, no one has ever heard Pastor Everett Quinn speak to his wife with such authority. My mother sinks back into her seat, shock etched across her face. Beckett attempts recovery, summoning his courtroom charm. "Wedding day nerves," he says with a forced laugh, placing his hand on my arm. "Perfectly normal. Let's continue with—" I step away from his touch. From the second row, Judge Holloway rises. "I believe we should hear what evidence my future daughter-in-law is referring to," he says, his judicial demeanor intact but his eyes sharp with suspicion. My mother stands again, moving toward me with outstretched hands. "Darling, let's discuss this privately. This isn't the venue for—" Margaret steps forward from her place among my bridesmaids. Followed by two others, they form a barrier between my mother and me. "Not another step, Mrs. Quinn," Margaret says quietly. As I stand before the congregation, evidence in hand, I hesitate for just a moment. Should I release all the intimate details and leave nothing to the imagination, or is the public acknowledgement of betrayal enough? How much truth does justice require? From her strategic position near the side aisle, Fallon raises her camera, the click of her shutter punctuates the silence like a metronome of justice. Margaret steps forward, her voice trembling but determined. "I witnessed Beckett and Mrs. Quinn together at the Mayflower Hotel 3 weeks ago. They didn't see me. I should have told Rowan immediately, but I was afraid. I'm not afraid anymore." Deacon Harris, a man who has known me since childhood, moves quietly through the church distributing copies of selected journal pages to key family members. His face remains impassive, but his actions speak volumes about where his loyalty lies. Judge Holloway receives his copy with judicial calm. I watch as his eyes scan the pages, his expression transforming from disbelief to cold fury. He looks up at his son, then deliberately turns away. The murmurs throughout the church shift in tone. Shock and confusion give way to understanding, then support. Several older women who have known my mother for decades now avoid looking in her direction. Beckett's confident smile collapses as his father's rejection registers. His eyes dart desperately around the sanctuary, finding no allies. My mother's carefully constructed social mask crumbles beneath the weight of exposed truth. Her perfectly applied makeup can't hide the dawning realization that her standing in this community, built over decades of careful cultivation, has shattered in minutes. I take a deep breath, readying myself for what comes next. Before I leave, I have one final thing to say. The congregation leans forward collectively, hungry for the final act in this unexpected drama unfolding before them. I have captured their attention completely now. Not as the blushing bride they expected, but as a woman standing firmly in her truth. In this moment, I am more powerful than I have ever been. Beckett springs forward, his polished veneer cracking as he reaches for my hands. "Rowan, please," he whispers, voice cracking. "We can work through this. We still have our life together." His fingers tremble as they stretch toward mine, his eyes darting nervously to where his father sits stone-faced. "Darling," my mother calls out, her voice breaking with theatrical precision as she steps into the aisle. "It was just a terrible mistake. You can't throw everything away over one terrible mistake." Years of watching Lorraine Quinn perfect her public performances have taught me to recognize the calculated wobble in her voice, the precise angle of her head that displays her diamond earrings to their best advantage. "Think of our family reputation," Beckett presses, his voice dropping lower. "The scandal will touch everyone. Your father's congregation, my father's position on the bench." My mother nods eagerly, sliding toward me with outstretched arms. "We can still salvage this, darling. The caterers are waiting. The photographer has been paid." Beckett leans closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Your career might not survive this kind of drama, Rowan. Publishing is a small world. The Holloways have long memories." I step back, my spine straightening as I slide the 3-carat diamond from my finger. The ring catches the light streaming through the stained glass windows, scattering tiny rainbows across the altar. A final performance before I place it carefully on the Bible. "Allow me to share one more entry from my mother's journal," I say, opening the leather-bound book to a marked page. My voice carries easily through the hushed church. Beckett laughed when I told him about Rowan's ambitions to head the literary division. The poor girl doesn't realize she lacks the necessary backbone. We agreed she's better suited as the supportive wife while he builds his career in his father's firm. Whispers rustle through the pews like wind through autumn leaves. I close the journal with deliberate care. "I've accepted a senior editor position with Blackwell Publishing in Philadelphia," I announce. "I start next week." Apparently someone with a backbone was exactly what they were looking for. The collective intake of breath from the guests feels like validation I never knew I needed. From the corner of my eye I see Fallon, camera at the ready, giving me a slight nod. "I don't need a marriage built on lies or a mother who envies her daughter," I continue, my voice growing stronger with each word. "Today I'm choosing truth over convenience, respect over betrayal." I turn slightly toward Judge Holloway, meeting his gaze directly. The man who intimidated me throughout our engagement gives me a subtle nod, the smallest acknowledgement of my dignity. His eyes, so like his son's but filled with deeper wisdom, shift to Beckett with unmistakable disappointment. "Rowan, you're making a terrible mistake," my mother says, her voice sharpening as her social mask slips. "You're throwing away everything we've worked for." I stand taller in the ivory silk dress my mother selected. The constricting bodice no longer suffocates but armors me for this moment. The cascading fabric that once felt like a cage now flows around me like a queen's robe. With deliberate movements, I reach up and unpin the cathedral-length veil from my hair. The delicate lace, hand-sewn with pearls that Lorraine insisted upon, floats down as I gather it carefully in my hands. I cross to where my mother stands frozen in the aisle, her perfect makeup unable to hide the fury in her eyes. With ceremonial precision, I drape the veil across her lap, the pearls catching the light. "You wanted to be the bride so badly, Mother. Here's your chance." Beckett lunges forward, grabbing for my arm. "You ungrateful little—" His words cut short as my father steps between us, his pastoral hand firm on Beckett's chest. The shock on Beckett's face mirrors the astonishment on the guests' faces. Everett Quinn, who has spent a lifetime preaching forgiveness and turning the other cheek, stands immovable. "Not another word to my daughter," he says quietly. I turn and walk down the aisle alone, head high. The silk rustles against the carpet as the stunned congregation begins to stand, one by one, in a strange reversal of the wedding procession. Old Mrs. Hollingsworth, who taught Sunday school when I was a child, reaches out to squeeze my hand as I pass. Judge Holloway's sister, a retired professor, nods with unmistakable approval. At the heavy wooden doors I pause, turning back to face the wreckage of what should have been my wedding day. The collective gasp is audible as everyone waits for my final words. "I hope you both find the happiness you sought behind my back," I say, my voice clear and steady. "I'll be finding mine in the open." The doors close behind me with a satisfying thud as I step into the bright June sunshine. My phone buzzes immediately with incoming texts. Rumors already spreading that Judge Holloway has called an emergency meeting with his law partners regarding Beckett's position at the firm. In my hotel room that evening, I peel off the wedding gown and hang it carefully in the closet, not as a memento, but as evidence of who I no longer need to be. The woman staring back from the mirror looks different somehow, eyes clearer, shoulders straighter. My phone lights up with a message from my father. Breakfast tomorrow, 8 a.m. Your choice of place. Love, Dad. I smile, wondering if he has already spoken to a divorce attorney or if that conversation still lies ahead. For now, it is enough to know I will face tomorrow standing in my truth, whatever comes next. 6 months later, I sweep into the conference room with a stack of manuscripts, my heels clicking purposefully against the hardwood. 6 months in Philadelphia, and I no longer hesitate before speaking. The Pearson memoir needs restructuring, I announce, tapping the top manuscript. We're burying the emotional hook. Let's open with her confrontation at the hospital instead. My team nods, scribbling notes. No one questions my authority, not anymore. Against the wall hangs a framed Philadelphia Inquirer article praising my bold editorial direction at Keystone Publishing. The writer noted my refreshing willingness to champion overlooked voices, something my predecessor had avoided. I catch my reflection in the window. Simple cream blouse, auburn hair falling in natural waves rather than the severe chignon my mother preferred. My office bears no trace of Lorraine Quinn's influence, bookshelves crowded with titles she would deem common, a bright yellow armchair instead of the muted blues she insisted were sophisticated. The room breathes authenticity, my authenticity. Later that evening, I settle into my velvet seat at the Academy of Music. Verdi's La Traviata fills the hall, the same opera during which Beckett proposed. The memory surfaces without sting, like examining an old photograph belonging to someone else. When the soprano reaches her magnificent aria, I close my eyes, letting the music wash over me, not as someone's accessory, not as Pastor Quinn's dutiful daughter or Judge Holloway's perfect daughter-in-law, but as Rowan, simply Rowan. During intermission, a distinguished man with silver temples approaches. "Forgive me," he says, "but are you enjoying the performance?" 6 months ago, I would have offered a polite, forgettable response designed to neither impress nor offend. Tonight, I meet his gaze directly. "I'm particularly struck by the conductor's interpretation," I reply. He takes the third movement, slower than traditional renditions, which gives the emotion room to breathe. He appears pleasantly surprised by my specific observation. We discuss music for several minutes before the bells signal the second act. As we part, I realize I have just engaged in a conversation without once wondering what impression I was making or what Beckett would think. More surprising still, I haven't thought about my mother or Beckett in weeks. "To second chances and honest beginnings," my father says, raising his glass at a corner table in Park Restaurant. Across from me, Fallon and Margaret echo the toast, their faces warm in the candlelight. Dad looks younger somehow, the furrows in his brow smoothed since taking his position at a small Presbyterian church in Media. He watches me laugh at Fallon's story, and I catch something in his eyes. Pride without qualification, love without expectation. The weight of his silence after my wedding day revelation has lifted, replaced by weekly calls and monthly visits. Neither of us mentions Lorraine. 2 weeks later, I stand at a podium at the Women's Writing Conference of Philadelphia. 200 faces look up at me, pens poised over notebooks. "The most powerful story you'll ever tell is your own," I say, my voice carrying to the back row without strain. "Sometimes the happy ending isn't a wedding, sometimes it's walking away from one." Gentle laughter ripples through the audience. On my desk at home sit the first 50 pages of my memoir, tentatively titled, "The Wedding I Deserved." The irony is not lost on me. During the Q&A, a woman with kind eyes asks, "After everything, do you think you'll ever trust enough to marry?" I pause, touching the small silver pendant my father gave me last Christmas, inscribed with "Truth endures." "I haven't closed that door," I answer thoughtfully, "but now I know the difference between a relationship and a rescue." As I stand before that room full of women, some nodding in recognition of my story, I wonder, is the greatest revenge living well? Or is it making sure those who wronged you know exactly how well you're living without them? For now, at least, I have chosen the former, but I haven't deleted Lorraine's number from my phone, not quite yet.